If you want to learn how to build one of the best longsword setups in the latest update, you are in the right place. The Rafel Samurai is a build capable of dealing great damage per second without relying on any Artian weapons. So if you hate crafting Artian weapons, this build is for you. This Samurai build will give you 95% raw affinity and high critical boost multipliers to easily maintain high damage and give the user the ability to stay in white sharpness for even more consistency. Not only you will be a Zoshia killer, but can also be effective in general monsters as well. Before that, this video is brought to you by Mitch Cactus. If you want to have thousands of gold tickets and armor spheres for just as low as 19.99 USD, or even have the best gear and items in Monster Hunter Wilds, Mitch Cactus has you covered. Mitch Cactus is one of the leading boosting services in the space, especially in Monster Hunter Wilds. Get all of the best weapons and armor sets in the game by getting their item boost package, or get tons of Zennies by buying their modular Zenny packs for your upgrade sessions, or purchase packages that will give you the best decorations and ancient weapon fragments for your Artian crafting needs. Take your game to the next level by getting their safe and secure ban-free services through 100% legitimate in-game grinding. With more than 15k positive reviews in Trustpilot, you are in safe hands. Skip the grind today and grab a limited time discount with the code SAMURAI, link in the description, only for you my lords and ladies. Learn more details by heading to the description. The main component to make this build work is the Blazing Rafel Long Sword, which has an amazing stats of 220 raw attack, 4% affinity, and 200 dragon element. This weapon can almost outperform dragon Artian weapons if it had better decoration slots, but this sword only has level 3, 2, and 1 for the decoration slots. I will be comparing this to an Artian weapon later on as well, or I will go over quickly how this build compares to our staple meta builds as of now. But for you to see the effectiveness of this build, let's go over how Whiteflame Torrent works, which is the main reason why Zoshia weapons are so good and can be one of the staple longswords in the current meta. The Whiteflame Torrent deals an additional 50 flat damage on top of your raw damage when it procs, regardless of where the hits landed, which is insane. In terms of how it works, there is a complicated design built around it, but to put it simply, players will have the chance to make the skill proc in every 3 seconds. This means that a first hit can trigger it, a second hit can trigger it, and get a sure proc on the third. If an attack fails, for example, on the first hit, it will go under a 3-second cooldown and have a chance to proc it on the second hit. If the second hit on the other hand fails to proc the skill, then another 3 seconds will take in effect. Then after waiting 3 seconds, the Whiteflame Torrent will 100% proc on the third hit. So we do have a lot of RNG involved here. Shout out to Dreaming Samtide who gave us a comprehensive breakdown for these skills, which is a godsend. If you want to learn more about the Whiteflame Torrent and its specifics, I highly suggest checking his video out. But the biggest downside of this is not every weapon skill or moveset can proc Whiteflame Torrent, and it varies from weapon to weapon. Longsword in general is fine, and in fact, it covers most of our staple combos. Crimson slash 1 to 3 procs Whiteflame, the normal foresight procs it, and the same thing to overhead slash, crescent slash, thrust, fate slash, Spirit Blade 3, and Rising Slash. But the following does not proc Whiteflame Torrent, which is a total missed opportunity in my opinion. Spirit Blade combo in general, aside from Spirit Blade 3, does not proc the skill. Spirit Helm Breaker, and Force Light Word Slash does not proc it unless I am just really unlucky after doing several tests, and EI Slash does not proc it as well. This is a total letdown, I know, but given the fact that it is applied to our main Creation slash spam combo and to our other longsword staple combos, I'm still seeing great results across all of my tests. Moving on to the Rafel Samurai's armor sets, and for the armor pieces, slot in 2 pieces of Zoshia sets, which are the Numinous Crown and Shroud Beta, G-Arc Velvam braces for the arms, and Gore Coil and Greaves Beta for the waist and legs. We're Exploiter Charm so we can have access to level 2 weakness exploit skill. You do have 2 options when it comes to mantles, but Corrupted Mantle is going to be our choice here despite the nerf. It's 10% additional affinity and 4.5% attack increase, and additional damage are simply too good to ignore. If you don't care about the damage and want more survivability, the Rocksteady Mantle is always a good choice. A mantle that grants damage reduction, hyper armor, and protection from other elements as well, perfect for players who are still adjusting at endgame. Moving on to the Rafel Samurai's decoration, Slot in Mastery Jewel 3 and Critical Jewel 1 and 2 on your weapon slots. The headpiece will have Chain Jewel 3, Mighty Jewel 2, and Recovery Jewel 1. While for the armor slot, equip a Tenderizer Jewel 3. 3-sheet Jewel 1 will be slotted on the arms, and the waist will get Challenger Jewel 3 and Mighty Jewel 2. And lastly, Challenger Jewel 3 and 2 Saint Jewels will be slotted on the leg part of this set. Following all my gear suggestions will grant us the following skills. Since we are limited on our weapon decoration slots, a level 3 critical boost is the best we can have, giving at least a decent 34% critical damage boost. A Master's Touch is mandatory for this build to mitigate the sharpness loss drastically, especially in long fights. We are now starting to see longer fights. For example, Zosia lasts around 17 to 30 minutes in multiplayer, and I always see sharpness loss and using whetstones as DPS loss. A level 5 weakness exploit, which grants the build 30% added affinity when hitting enemy weak points and 20% more on wounds. Pretty important if we want to hit that 94% affinity threshold. We also have access to a level 5 agitator for an easy plus 20 attack and 15% affinity when the monster becomes enraged, which is more than half of the time of a certain fight. We are wearing 2 pieces of the gore set, so having a level 3 antivirus is an absolute must. It will help you overcome Frenzy easily and get additional 10% affinity after overcoming Frenzy. The 15% being shown here is a typo from Capcom, so keep that in mind. A level 3 quick sheet is highly suggested at this point since the longsword weapon really demands counters, and the level 3 quick sheet help you sheet your weapons faster, especially when doing AI counters. If you don't prefer using counters, I highly suggest slotting in 3 protection jewels to have a level 3 divine blessings instead for a 50% damage reduction. A level 2 constitution reduces fixed stamina consumption by 20%, which is a nice bonus. We do have a level 2 maximum might, which grants 20% affinity on this build. Since longsword does not require stamina usage that much, this is one of the best skills to rack up affinity easily. This build has an innate life regen capabilities, so a level 2 recovery speed is a nice bonus, allowing you to regen health faster when the red portion of your health is present. A level 1 burst might seem underwhelming, but in fact, it is fantastic, adding plus 8 raw attack after dealing 5 hits consecutively, which is an easy feat for a longsword. Now you might be wondering if Adrenaline Rush is better to slot in, but in this configuration, we can only slot level 1 Adrenaline Rush instead of Burst. If you're gonna slot Adrenaline Rush, that's a plus 10 raw attacks every time a perfect evade procs, which you can easily do so with a Foresight Word Slash. If you can perform Foresight Will consistently, by all means, replace Burst. But if you don't want to do any kind of counters, stick to Burst. Level 1 Flinch Free is a nice bonus from our armor set, which prevents knockbacks. Since this build has 2 gore pieces equipped, a Gore Magala's Tyranny set bonus is active, granting this build the mandatory Frenzy status. Black Eclipse 1 not only adds Frenzy, but when the said status has been cured, it buffs the user with another 15% affinity. So you will have an additional 25% affinity combined with a level 3 antivirus. Overall giving you 95% across the board affinity wise, which is very nice, and it will help maintain high damage per second in general. Of course, using the mantle will ensure 100% affinity by adding 10% more on top of the damage it provides. When it comes to damage tests, I usually test the damage of my builds by hitting the dummy 21 times and getting the average. All skills are active while food buffs and Mega Demon Drug are also applied to the test as well. Performing the Crimson Slash 1 and Spirit Blade combo, we can see that the DPS range is around between 2400 to 2500 after several test runs, which is pretty impressive to be honest. The Whiteflame Torrent skill definitely adds up to the overall damage, which is fantastic, and remember, it deals 50 flat damage regardless if the user hits the enemy weak points or not. These offer values to casual players since even though they're not hitting optimal weak spots, they can still deal a decent amount of damage. Not over the top of course, but decent. So how does the Rafel Samurai build compare to the current meta? There is no doubt that Zosia weapons are generally great, and surprisingly, it is comparable to Dragon Artian Weapons. And of course, you will pick this build on any day if you are sick and tired of Artian Weapons, which I think many of you are. The raw stats are pretty much close, but we can see that a Dragon Artian weapon with a perfect stat is still way ahead with 100 Dragon element damage. The Zoshia weapons loses outright from Artians if the enemy is Dragon resistant. With the Artian raw damage stats, a good Dragon Artian longsword deals around 2500 to 2600 damage range, 100 plus damage ahead compared to the Zoshia longsword, which is great and it clearly shows how good Blazing Rafel is. If you don't care about min-maxing and just want to deal high damage, Blazing Rafel is a good option. But I cannot stress that paralysis is still king even when playing solo or especially in multiplayer. The value paralysis offers is simply too good to pass up, so Artian still remains meta for now. But as mentioned, I know that all of us are sick and tired of these weapons, so using the Blazing Rafel is a refreshing experience. Not to mention, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But as mentioned previously, the Zoshia longsword is more than enough for general use given the enemy is not strong against Dragon element. The flat damage it provides is simply too good, especially when hitting non-weakness monster body parts, providing a lot of value for casual players. This build is a killer, especially if you want faster clear times in Zoshia fights, and overall a great build in the latest update. However, if you are preparing to clear the latest update and looking for the best longsword builds, here are my top 3 longsword builds that you can use, and also my updated Night Flower Pollen method to earn tons of decorations and fragments fast. And I will catch you on the next one.